Chapter 3. Mud-stains and blood-stains. Other things are all very well in their way, but give me blood. We say, there it is, that's blood. It is an actual matter of fact. We point it out. It admits of no doubt. We must have blood, you know. David Copperfield. Hitherto, said Lord Peter, as they picked their painful way through the little wood on the trail of number 10, I have always maintained that those obliging criminals who strew their tracks with little articles of personal adornment, here he is on a squashed fungus, were an invention of detective fiction for the benefit of the author. I see I have still something to learn about my job. Well, you haven't been at it very long, have you? Besides, we don't know if the diamond cat is for criminals. It may belong to a member of your own family and been lying there for days. It might belong to Mr. What's-his-name in the States, or to the last tenant but one, and lay there for years. Now, this broken branch, that may be our friend. I think it is. We could find out in the village if anyone's ever inquired for a lost cat. But these are pucker stones. It ain't the sort of thing one would drop without making a fuss about. No, I've lost him altogether. No, it's all right, I've got him. He's tripped over a root. Serve him glad, Lord Peter said viciously, straightening his back. I say I don't think the human frame is very thoughtfully constructed for this sleuth-hound business. If one could go on all fours or had eyes in one's knees, it would be a lot more practical. There are many difficulties inherent in a teleological view of creation, said Parker placidly. Ah, here we are. The park palings. And here's where he got over. Here's the dent where his heels came down, and here's where he fell forward on hands and knees. There. Give us a back, old man, would you? Thanks. An old break, I see. Mr. Montague, now in the States, should keep his palings in better order. Number 10 tore his coat on the spikes, all the same. He's left a fragment of Burberry behind him. What luck! Here's a deep damp ditch on the other side, which I shall now proceed to fall into. A slithering crash proclaimed that he had carried out his intention. Parker, thus callously abandoned, looked round, and seeing that they were only a few hundred yards or so from the gate, ran along and was let out, decorously by Harddraw the gamekeeper, who happened to be coming out of the lodge. By the way, said Parker to him, did you ever find any signs of poachers on Wednesday night after all? Nay, not so much as a dead rabbit. I reckon lady were mistaken, and 'twas a shot I heard as killed Captain. Possibly. Do you know how long these spikes have been broken on the palings over there? Month or two, maybe. Oh, they should have been put right, but the man's sick. The gate's locked at night, I suppose? Aye. Anybody wishing to get in would have to waken you? Aye, that he would. You didn't see any suspicious character loitering about outside the palings last Wednesday, I suppose? Nay, sir, but my wife may have done. Eh, lass! Mrs. Harddraw, thus summoned, appeared at the door, with a small boy clinging to her skirts. Wednesday? Nay, I saw no loitering folks. I keep a look-out for tramps and such, as it be such a lonely place. Wednesday. And now, John, that 'ud be the day young man called with motorbike. Young man with a motorbike? I reckon 'twas. Said he'd had a puncture and asked for a bucket of water. Was that all the asking he did? Asked what the name of place and whose house it were. Did you tell him the Duke of Denver was living here? Aye, sir. Said he supposed many gentlemen came up for shooting. Did he say where he was going? He said he'd come up for a Weardale and were making a trip into Cumberland. How long was he here? Happen half an hour. When he tried to get his machine started, he was up it and away towards King's Fenton. She pointed away to the right, where Lord Peter might be seen gesticulating in the middle of the road. What sort of man was he? Like most people, Mrs. Harddraw was poor at definition. She thought he was youngish and tallish, neither dark nor fair, in such a long coat as motor bicyclists use, with a belt round it. Was he a gentleman? Well, now you're asking. Not quite. You didn't happen to notice the number of a bicycle? No, but it had a sidecar. Lord Peter's gesticulations were becoming more violent. Mr. Parker hastened to rejoin him. "Come on, stop gossiping, old thing." "Well, this is a beautiful ditch." "From such a ditch as this, when the soft wind did gently kiss the trees, and they did make no noise, from such a ditch our friend, methinks, mounted the Trojan walls, and wiped his soles upon the greasy mud. Look at my trousers." "It's a bit of a climb from this side." "It is." He stood here in the ditch and put one foot into the place where the paling's broken away, and one hand on the top, hauled himself up. Number 10 must be a man of exceptional height, strength, and agility. I can't get my foot up, let alone reaching the top with my hand. I'm 5'9". Could you? Parker was 6 foot and could just touch the top of the wall with his hand. I could do it on one of my best days, with an adequate object, or after adequate stimulant. Well, just so. Hence we deduce number 10's exceptional height and strength. Yes. It's a bit unfortunate that we had to deduce his exceptional shortness and weakness just now, isn't it? Oh. Well, as you rightly say, it is a bit unfortunate. Well, it may clear up presently. He didn't have a confederate to give him a back or a leg, I suppose. Not unless the confederate was being without feet or any visible means of support. Lord Peter indicated the solitary print of a pair of patched 10s. By the way, how did he make straight in the dark for the place where the spikes were missing? Looks as though he belonged to the neighbourhood, or had reconnoitred previously. Arising out of that reply, I will now relate to you the entertaining gossip I had with Mrs. Hardraw. Said Wimsey at the end of it. That's interesting. We'd better make inquiries at Riddlesdale and King's Hinton. Meanwhile, we know where number 10 came from. Now, where did he go after leaving Cathcart's body by the well? The footsteps went into the preserve. I lost them there. There's a regular carpet of dead leaves and bracken. Well, we needn't go through all that sleuth grind again. The fellow went in, and as he presumably is not there still, he came out again. He didn't come out through the gate, or Hardraw would have seen him. He didn't come out the way he went in, or he would have left some traces. Therefore he came out elsewhere. Let us walk round the wall. Then we'll turn to the left, since that's the side of a preserve, and he apparently went through there. True, O King, and as this isn't a church, there's no harm in going round it with the shins. Talking of church, there's Helen coming back. Get a move on, old thing. They crossed the drive, passed the cottage, and then, leaving the road, followed the paling across some open grass fields. It was not long before they found what they sought. From one of the iron spikes above them dangled forlornly a strip of material. With Parker's assistance, Wimsey scrambled up in a state of almost lyric excitement. Here we are, the belt of a Burberry. No sort of precaution here. Here are the toe prints of a fellow sprinting for his life. He tore off his Burberry, he made desperate leaps, 1, 2, 3 at the palings. At the third leap he hooked it on the spikes, scrambled up, scoring along, scrabbling marks on the paling. He reached the top. Ah, here's a bloodstain run into this crack. He tore his hands. He dropped off. He wrenched the coat away, leaving the belt hanging. I wish you'd drop off. You're breaking my collarbone. Lord Peter dropped off obediently and stood there holding the belt between his fingers. His narrow grey eyes wandered restlessly over the field. Suddenly he seized Parker's arm and marched briskly in the direction of the wall on the farther side, a low erection of unmortared stone in the fashion of the country. Here he hunted along like a terrier, nose foremost, the tip of his tongue caught absurdly between his teeth, then jumped over and, turning to Parker, said, "Did you ever read the Lay of the Last Minstrel?" "I learnt a good deal of it at school." "Why?" "Because there was a goblin page boy in it, who was always yelling, 'Found, found, found,' at the most unnecessary moments. I always thought him a terrible nuisance, but now I know how he felt. See here!" Close under the wall, and sunk heavily into the narrow and muddy lane which ran up here at right angles to the main road, was the track of a sidecar combination. Very nice, too. New Dunlop type on the front wheel, old tyre on the back, gaiter on the sidecar tyre. Nothing could be better. Tracks come in from the road and go back to the road. Fellow shoved the machine in here in case of somebody of an inquisitive turn of mind passing on the road. They might make off with it, or take its number. Then he went round on Shanks's mare to the gap he'd spotted in the daytime and got over. After the Cathcart affair he took fright, bolted into the preserve, and took the shortest way to his bus regardless. Well now, he sat down on the wall and, drawing out his notebook, began to jot down a description of the man from the data already known. Things begin to look a bit more comfortable for old Jerry. He leaned on the wall and began whistling softly but with great accuracy that elaborate passage of Bach which begins, "Let Zion's children."
"I wonder," said the Honourable Freddie Arbuthnot, "what damn silly fool invented Sunday afternoon?" He shovelled coals onto the library fire with a vicious clatter, waking Colonel Marchbanks, who said, "Eh? Ah, quite right," and fell asleep again instantly. "Don't you grumble, Freddie," said Lord Peter, who had been occupied for some time in opening and shutting all the drawers of the writing-table in a thoroughly irritating manner, and idly snapping to and fro the catch of the French windows. "Think how dull old Jerry must be. I suppose I'd better write him a line." He returned to the table and took a sheet of paper. "Do people use this room much to write letters in, do you suppose?" "No idea. Never write them myself. What's the point of writing when you can wire? It encourages people to write back. I think Denver writes in here when he writes anywhere, and I saw the Colonel wrestling with pen and ink a day or two ago. Didn't you, Colonel?" The Colonel answered his name like a dog that wags its tail in its sleep. "What's the matter then, eh? No ink?" "Oh, I only wondered." Peter slipped a paper knife under the top sheet of a blotting pad and held it up to the light. "Quite right, old man. Give you full marks for observation. Here's Jerry's signature, and the Colonel, and a big sprawling hand which I should judge to be feminine." He looked at the sheet again, shook his head, folded it up, and placed it in his pocket-book. "Doesn't seem to be anything there. But you never know. 5 something, or fine something. Grouse, probably. O-E, blank, is F-O-U, found is found, I suppose. Well, it can't do any harm to keep it." He spread out the writing paper and began. "Dear Jerry, here I am, the family sleuth on the trail. And it's damned exciting." Sunday afternoon. Parker had gone with the car to King's Fenton, with orders to look in at Riddlesdale on the way and inquire for a green-eyed cat, also for a young man with a sidecar. The Duchess was lying down, Mrs. Pettigrew Robinson had taken her husband for a brisk walk, and upstairs, somewhere, Mrs. Marchbanks enjoyed a perfect communion of thought with her husband. Lord Peter's pen gritted gently over the paper, stopped, moved on again, stopped altogether. He leaned his long chin on his hands and stared out of a window, against which there came sudden little swishes of rain, and from time to time a soft dead leaf. The Colonel snored. The fire tinkled. The Honourable Freddie began to hum and tap his fingers on the arms of a chair. The clock moved slothfully on to 5 o'clock, which brought tea-time and the Duchess. "How's Mary?" asked Lord Peter, coming suddenly into the firelight. "I'm really worried about her. She's giving way to her nerves in the strangest manner. It's so unlike her. She'll hardly let anyone come near her. I have sent for Dr. Thorpe again." "Don't you think she'd be better if she got up and came downstairs for a bit? Gets brooding about things all by herself, I shouldn't wonder. Wants a bit of Freddie's intellectual conversation to cheer her up." "You forget, poor girl, she was engaged to Captain Cathcart. Everybody isn't as callous as you are."
"Any more letters, Your Grace?" asked the footman, appearing with a post-bag.
"Oh, are you going down now?" said Wimsey. "Yes, here you are, and there's one other, if you don't mind waiting a minute while I write it. Wish I could write at the rate people do in the cinema. Dear Lillian, Your father has killed Mr. William Snooks, and unless you send me £1,000 by bearer, I shall disclose all to your husband. Sincerely, Earl of Digglesbrake. That's for style, and all done in one scrape of a pen. Here you are, Fleming." The letter was addressed to Her Grace, the Duchess of Denver. From the Morning Post of Monday, November. Abandoned motorcycle. A singular discovery was made yesterday by a cattle drover. He is accustomed to water his animals in a certain pond lying a little off the road about 12 miles north of Ripley. On this occasion he saw that one of them appeared to be in difficulties, and on going to the rescue he found the animal entangled in a motorcycle which had been driven into the pond and abandoned. With the assistance of a couple of workmen he extricated the machine. It is a Douglas with a dark grey sidecar. The number plates and licence holder have been carefully removed. The pond is a deep one, and the outfit was entirely submerged. It seems probable, however, that it could not have been there for more than a week, since the pond is much used on Sundays and Mondays for the watering of cattle. The police are making a search for the owner. The front tyre of the bicycle is a new Dunlop, and the sidecar tyre has been repaired with gaiter. The machine is a 1914 model, much worn. "That seemed to strike a chord," said Lord Peter musingly. He consulted the timetable for the time of the next train to Ripley, and ordered the car. "Oh, and send Bunter to me, would you?" That gentleman arrived just as his master was struggling into an overcoat. "What was that thing in Thursday's paper about a number plate, Bunter?" Mr. Bunter produced, apparently by legerdemain, a cutting from an evening paper. "Read it out, there's a good fellow." "Certainly, my lord. It says number plate mystery. The Reverend Nathaniel Folis of St. Simon's, North Felcote, was stopped at 6 o'clock this morning for riding a motorcycle without number plates. The reverend gentleman seemed thunderstruck when his attention was called to the matter. He explained that he had been sent for in great haste at 4 a.m. to administer the sacrament to a dying parishioner 6 miles away. He hastened out on his motorcycle, which he confidingly left by the roadside while executing his sacred duties, and Mr. Folis left the house at 5:30 without noticing anything was wrong. Mr. Folis is well known in North Felcote and the surrounding country, and there seems little doubt that he has been the victim of a senseless practical joke. North Felcote is a small village, a couple of miles north of Ripley." "I'm going to Ripley, Bunter." "Yes, my lord." "Does your lordship require me?" "No. But who has been lady-maiding my sister, Bunter?" "Oh, Ellen, my lord, the housemaid." "Then I wish you'd exercise your powers of conversation on Ellen." "Very good, my lord." "Does she mend my sister's clothes and brush her skirts and all that?" "I believe so, my lord." "Nothing she may think is of any importance, you know, Bunter." "Oh, I wouldn't suggest such a thing to a woman, my lord. It goes to their heads, if I may say so." "When did Mr. Parker leave for town?" "At 6 o'clock this morning, my lord." Circumstances favoured Mr. Bunter's inquiries. He bumped into Ellen as she was descending the back stairs with an armful of clothing. A pair of leather gauntlets was jerked from the top of the pile, and picking them up he apologetically followed the young woman into the servants' hall. "There," said Ellen, flinging her burden on the table. "And the work I've had to get them, I'm sure. Tantrums, that's what I call it. Pretending you've got such a headache you can't let a person into the room to take your things down to brush, and as soon as they're all out the way, hopping out of bed and traipsing all over the place. 'Tisn't what I call a headache, would you now? Oh, but there, I dare say you don't get them like I do. Regular fit to split my head sometimes. Couldn't keep on my feet, not if a house was burning down. I just have to lay down and keep laying. Something cruel it is. And it gives a person wrinkles in one's forehead." "Sure, I don't see any wrinkles, but perhaps I haven't looked hard enough." An interlude followed, during which Mr. Bunter looked hard enough and close enough to distinguish wrinkles. No wrinkles. I don't believe I'd see any if I was to take his lordship's big microscope he keeps up in town." "Law now, Mr. Bunter," said Ellen, fetching a sponge and a bottle of benzine from a cupboard. "What would his lordship be doing with a thing like that?" Oh, in our hobby, you see, Miss Ellen, which is criminal investigation, we might want to see something magnified extra big, as it might be handwriting in a forgery case, to see if anything's been altered or rubbed out, or if different kinds of ink have been used. Or we may want to look at the roots of a lock of hair to see if it's been torn out or fallen out. Or take bloodstains now. We'd want to know if it was animal's blood or human blood. Or maybe only a glass of port.
Oh, now, is that really true, Mr. Bunter?
Ellen laid the tweed skirt out on the table and unstoppered the benzine.
You and Lord Peter, you can find all that out?
Of course we aren't analytical chemists, but his lordship's dabbled in a lot of things. Enough to know when anything looks suspicious, and if we've any doubts, we send to a very famous scientific gentleman. Oh, allow me. He gallantly intercepted Ellen's hand as it approached the skirt with a benzine-soaked sponge. Now, for instance, you see, here's a stain on the hem of the skirt, just at the bottom of the side seam. Now, supposing it was a case of murder, we'll say, and the person that's worn this skirt was suspected, I should examine that stain. Here Mr. Bunter whipped a lens out of his pocket. Then I may try it at one edge with a wet handkerchief, and suited the action to the word. And I should find, you see, that it came off red. Then I should turn the skirt inside out, and I could see that the stain went right through, and I should take my scissors. Mr. Bunter produced a small, sharp pair, and snip off a tiny bit of the inside edge of the seam, like this. He did so, and pop it into a little pillbox. So, the pillbox appeared magically from an inner pocket. And of course I would seal up both ends with a wafer, and write on the top, Lady Mary Whimsy's skirt, and the date. Then I should send it off straight away to the analytical gentleman in London. And he'd look for his microscope, and he'd tell me right off that it was rabbit's blood, maybe, and how many days it had been there. That would be the end of that. Mr. Bunter triumphantly replaced his nail scissors and thoughtlessly pocketed the pillbox and its contents.
Well, he'd be wrong then, because it's bird's blood, not rabbit's at all, because her ladyship told me so. And wouldn't it be quicker just to go and find the person and ask them and go fiddling about with his silly old microscope and things?
Well, I only mentioned rabbits as an example. Funny she should have got a stain down there. Must have regularly knelt in it.
Yes, bled a lot, poor thing, hasn't it? Somebody must have been shooting careless like. It wasn't his Grace, or yet the captain, poor man. Perhaps it was Mr. Arbuthnot. He shoots a bit wild sometimes. It's a nasty mess anyway, and very hard to clean off, being left so long. I'm sure I wasn't thinking about cleaning anything the day the poor captain was killed. And then the coroner's inquest. Oh, that was horrid, that was. And his Grace being took off like that. Well, there, it upset me. I suppose I'm a bit sensitive. Anyway, we was all at 6s and 7s for a day or two, and then her ladyship shuts herself up in her room and won't let anyone go near the wardrobe. Oh, she says, do leave that wardrobe door alone. Don't you know it squeaks and my head's so bad and my nerves so bad I can't stand it? I was only going to brush your skirts, my lady, I says. Bother my skirts, says her ladyship. And do go away, Ellen. I shall scream if I see you fidgeting about here. You get on my nerves, she says. Well, I didn't see why I should go on, not after being spoken to like that. It's very nice to be a ladyship, and all your tempers coddled and called nervous prostration. I know I was dreadfully cut up about poor Bert, my young man who was killed in the war. I nearly cried my eyes out, I did, but law, Mr. Bunter, I'd be ashamed to go on like that. Between you and me and the gatepost, Lady Mary wasn't that fond of the captain anyway. Never appreciated him. That's what I said to cook at the time, and she agreed with me. Always quite the gentleman, of course, and never said anything as wasn't his place. I don't mean that. But I mean as it was a pleasure to do anything for him. Such a handsome man as he was too, Mr. Bunter.
So on the whole, her ladyship was a bit more upset than you expected her to be.
Well, to tell you the truth, Mr. Bunter, I think it's just temper. She wanted to get married and away from home. Oh, drat this stain, it's regular dried in. She and his Grace could never get on. And when she was away in London during the war, she had a rare old time nursing officers and going about with all kinds of queer people his Grace didn't approve of. Then she had a sort of love affair with some quite low-down sort of fellow. That's what Cook says. I think he was one of them dirty Russians as wants to blow us all to smithereens. As if there hadn't been enough people blown up in the war already. Anyway, his Grace made a dreadful fuss and stopped supplies and sent for her ladyship home, and ever since then she's been just mad to be off with somebody. Full of notions she is, makes me tired, I can tell you. Now I'm sorry for his Grace, I can see what he thinks, poor gentleman, and then to be taken up for murder and put in jail just like one of them nasty tramps. Oh, fancy. Having exhausted her breath and finished cleaning the bloodstains, Ellen paused and straightened her back. Hard work it is, rubbing. I quite ache.
If you would allow me to help you. Mr. Bunter appropriated the hot water and the benzine bottle and the sponge. He turned up another breadth of the skirt. Have you got a brush handy to take the mud off?
You're as blind as a bat, Mr. Bunter. Can't you see it just in front of you?
Oh, yes. Well, that's not a hard one as I'd like. Just you run off and get me a real hard one, there's a dear good girl, and I'll fix this for you.
Oh, cheek.
But, she added, relenting before the admiring gleam in Mr. Bunter's eye,
I'll get the clothes brush out of the hall for you. That's as hard as a brickbat, that is.
No sooner was she out of the room than Mr. Bunter produced a pocket-knife and 2 more pillboxes. In the twinkling of an eye he had scraped the surface of the skirt in 2 places and written 2 fresh labels. Gravel from Lady Mary's skirt, about 6 inches from hem. Silver sand from hem of Lady Mary's skirt. He entered the date and had hardly pocketed the boxes when Ellen returned with the clothes brush.
The cleaning process continued for some time, to the accompaniment of desultory conversation. A third stain on the skirt caused Mr. Bunter to stare critically. "Hullo! Her ladyship's been trying her hand at cleaning this herself." "What?" Ellen peered closely at the mark, which at one edge was smeared and whitened, and had a slightly greasy appearance. "Well, I never so she has. Whatever's that for, I wonder? And her pretending to be so ill she couldn't raise her head off a pillow. She's a sly one, she is. Couldn't it have been done before? Well, she might have been at it between the day the captain was killed and the inquest, though you wouldn't think that was the time to choose to begin learning domestic work. She ain't much of a hand of it, is she, for all her nursing? I never believed that came to anything. She's used soap," benzoning away resolutely. "Can she boil water in her bedroom?" "Now whatever would she do that for, Mr. Bunter? You don't think she keeps a kettle? I bring her morning tea up. Ladyships don't want to boil water?" "No. And why didn't she get it from the bathroom?" He scrutinized the stain more carefully still. "Very amateurish. Distinctly amateurish. Interrupted, I fancy. An energetic young lady, but not ingenious." The last remarks were addressed in confidence to the benzine bottle. Ellen had put her head out of the window to talk to the gamekeeper. The police superintendent at Ripley received Lord Peter at first frigidly, and later, when he found out who he was, with a mixture of the official attitude to private detectives and the official attitude to a duke's son. "I've come to you," said Wimsey, "because you can do this combing-about business a sight better than an amateur like myself. I suppose your fine organization's hard at work already, what?" "Naturally. But it's not altogether easy to trace a motorcycle without knowing the number. Look at the Bournemouth murder." He shook his head regretfully. "We didn't think at first of connecting him with the number plate business," the superintendent went on in a careless tone which somehow conveyed to Lord Peter that his own remarks within the last half-hour had established the connection in the official mind for the first time. "Of course, if he'd been seen going through Ripley without a number plate, he'd have been noticed and stopped. Whereas with Mr. Foulis he was as safe as was the Bank of England." "Obviously. Very agitating for the parson, poor chap. So early in the morning, too. I suppose, though, it was some sort of practical joke, hmm?" "Oh, just that. But after hearing what you have to tell us, we shall use our best efforts to get the man. I expect his Grace won't be any too sorry to hear he's found. You may rely on us, and if we find the man or the number plates—" "Lord bless us and save us, man! You're not going to waste time looking for number plates. What do you suppose he'd pinch for curates' plates for if he wanted to advertise his own about the neighbourhood? Once you drop on them, you've got his name and address. But so long as they're in his trouser pocket, you're up a gum tree. Forgive me, Superintendent, for shoving along with my opinion, but I simply can't bear to think of you taking all that trouble for nothing, dragging ponds and turning over rubbish heaps to look for number plates that ain't there. You just scour the railway stations for a young man 6'1" or 2" with a number 10 shoe, and dressed in a Burberry that's lost its belt, and with a deep scratch on one of his hands. And look here, here's my address, and I'll be very grateful if you'll let me know anything that turns up. So awkward for my brother, you know, all this. He's a sensitive man, and he feels it keenly. By the way, I'm a very uncertain bird, always hopping about. You might wire me any news in duplicate to Riddlesdale and to town, 110A Piccadilly. Always delighted to see you, by the way, if ever you're in town. You'll forgive me for sloping off now, won't you? I've got a lot to do. Returning to Riddlesdale, Lord Peter found a new visitor seated at the tea-table. At Peter's entry he rose into towering height and extended a shapely, expressive hand that would have made an actor's fortune. He was not an actor, but he found this hand useful nonetheless, in the exploitation of dramatic moments. His magnificent build and the nobility of his head and mask were impressive. His features were flawless, his eyes ruthless. The Dowager Duchess had once remarked, "Sir Impey Biggs is the handsomest man in England, and no woman will ever care twopence for him." He was in fact 38 and a bachelor, and celebrated for his rhetoric and his suave but pitiless dissection of hostile witnesses. The breeding of canaries was his unexpected hobby, and besides their song he could appreciate no music but review airs. He answered Whimsy's greeting in his beautiful, resonant and exquisitely controlled voice. Tragic irony, cutting contempt, or a savage indignation were the emotions by which Sir Impey Biggs swayed court and jury. He prosecuted murderers of the innocent, defended inactions for criminal libel, and, moving others, was as hard as stone. Whimsy expressed himself delighted to see him, in a voice, by contrast, more husky and hesitant even than usual. "You just come from Jerry? Fresh toast, please, Fleming. How is he? Enjoying it? I never knew a fellow like Jerry for getting the least possible out of any situation. I'd rather like the experience myself, you know, only I'd hate being shut up and watching the other idiots bungling my case. No reflection on Murbles and you, Biggs. I mean myself. I mean the man who would be me if I was Jerry. You'll follow me?" "I was just saying to Sir Impey," said the Duchess, "that he really must make Gerald say what he was doing in the garden at 3 a.m. If only he'd been at Riddlesdale, none of this would have happened. Of course we all know that he wasn't doing any harm, but we can't expect the jurymen to understand that. The lower orders are so prejudiced. It's absurd of Gerald not to realise that he must speak out. He's got no consideration." "I'm doing my very best to persuade him, Duchess, but you must have patience. Lawyers enjoy a little mystery, you know. Why, if everybody came forward and told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth straight out, we should all retire to the workhouse." "Captain Cathcart's death is very mysterious, though when I think of the things that have come out about him, it really seems quite providential, as far as my sister-in-law is concerned." "I suppose you couldn't get him to bring it in as death by the visitation of God, could you, Biggs? A sort of judgment for wanting to marry into the family, what?" "I've known less reasonable verdicts. It's wonderful what you can suggest to a jury if you try. I remember once at the Liverpool Assizes he steered skilfully away into a quiet channel of reminiscence. Lord Peter watched his statuesque profile against the fire. It reminded him of the severe beauty of the charioteer of Delphi, and about as communicative. It was not until after dinner that Sir Impey opened his mind to Whimsy. The Duchess had gone to bed, and the two men were alone in the library. Peter, scrupulously in evening dress, had been valeted by Bunter, and had been more than usually rambling and cheerful all evening. He now took a cigar, retired to the largest chair, and effaced himself in a complete silence. Sir Impey Biggs walked up and down for some half-hour, smoking. Then he came across, with determination, brutally switched on a reading lamp right into Peter's face, and sat down opposite him. "Now, Whimsy, I want to know all you know." "Do you, though?" Peter got up, disconnected the reading lamp, and carried it away to a side table. "No bullying of the witness, though? I don't care as long as you wake up. Now then." Lord Peter removed his cigar from his mouth, considered it with his head on one side, turned it carefully over, and decided that the ash could hang on to its parent leaf for another minute or two, and smoked it without speaking until collapse was inevitable. He took the cigar out again, deposited the ash entire in the exact centre of the ashtray, and began his statement, omitting only the matter of the suitcase and Bunter's information obtained from Ellen. Sir Impey Biggs listened with what Peter irritably described as a cross-examining countenance, putting a sharp question every now and again. He made a few notes, and when Peter had finished, sat tapping his notebook thoughtfully. "I think we can make a case out of this, even if the police don't find your mysterious man. Denver's silence is an awkward complication, of course, but did you say you'd put the police on to find the fellow?" "Yes." "Have you a very poor opinion of the police?" "Not for that kind of thing. It's in their line. They've got the facilities. They do it well." "You expect to find the man, do you?" "I hope to." "What do you think is going to happen to my case if you do find him, Whimsy? You're not a fool, and it's no use trying to look like a country policeman. You are really trying to find this man?" "Certainly." "Just as you like, of course, but my hands are rather tied already. Has it ever occurred to you that perhaps he had better not be found?" Whimsy stared at the lawyer with such honest astonishment as actually to disarm him. "Remember this, that if once the police get hold of a thing or a person, it's no use relying on my or Murbal's or anybody else's professional discretion. Everything is raked out into the light of common day, and very common it is. Here is Denver accused of murder, and he refuses in the most categorical way to give me the smallest assistance." "But Jerry's an ass. He doesn't realize. Do you suppose I have not made it my business to make him realize? All he says is, 'They can't hang me. I didn't kill the man, though I think it's a jolly good thing he's dead. It's no business of theirs what I was doing in the garden.' Now I ask you, Whimsy, is that a reasonable attitude for a man in Denver's position to take up?" "Well, he never had any sense. Has anybody told Denver about this other man?" "Something vague was said about footsteps at the inquest, I believe." "That Scotland Yard man is your personal friend, I'm told?" "Yes." "So much the better. He can hold his tongue." "Now look here, Biggs, this is all damned impressive and mysterious, but what are you getting at? Why shouldn't I lay hold of the beggar if I can?" "I'll answer that question by another. Why is Denver screening him?" Sir Impey Biggs was accustomed to boast that no witness could perjure himself in his presence undetected. As he put the question, he released the other's eyes from his and glanced down with finest cunning at Whimsy's long, flexible mouth and nervous hands. When he glanced up again a second later, he met the eyes passing, guarded and inscrutable, through all the changes expressive of surprised enlightenment. But by that time it was too late. He'd seen a little line at the corner of the mouth fade out, and the fingers relax ever so slightly. The first movement had been one of relief. "By Jove, I never thought of that. What sleuths you lawyers are! Well, if that's so, I'd better be careful, hadn't I? I always was a bit rash. My mother says—" "You're a clever devil, Whimsy. I may be wrong, then. Find your man by all means. But there's just one other thing I'd like to ask. Whom are you screening?" "Now look here, Biggs. You're not paid to ask that kind of question here, you know. You can jolly well wait till you get caught. It's your job to make the best of the stuff we serve up to you, not to give us a third degree. Suppose I murdered Cathcart myself?" "Well, you didn't." "I know I didn't, but if I did, I'm not going to have you asking questions and looking at me in that tone of voice. However, just to oblige you, I don't mind saying plainly that I don't know who did away with the fellow. When I do, I'll tell you." "You will?" "Yes, I will. But not till I'm sure. You people can make such a little circumstantial evidence go such a damn long way. You might hang me while I was only in the early stages of suspecting myself." Meanwhile, I tell you candidly, I am taking the line that they can't make out a case. Not proven, eh? Well, anyhow, Biggs, I swear my brother shan't hang for lack of my evidence. Of course not. But you hope it won't come to that. A spurt of rain plashed down the wide chimney and sizzled on the logs. Craven Hotel, Strand, WC, Tuesday. My dear Whimsy, a line has promised to report progress, but it's precious little. On the journey up I sat next to Mrs. Pettigrew Robinson, and opened and shut the window for her, and looked after her parcels. She mentioned that when your sister roused the household on Thursday morning, she went first to Mr. Arbuthnot's room, a circumstance which the lady seemed to think odd, but which is natural enough when you come to think of it, the room being directly opposite the head of the staircase. It was Mr. Arbuthnot who knocked up the Pettigrew Robinsons, and Mr. P. ran downstairs immediately. Mrs. P. then saw that Lady Mary was looking very faint, and tried to support her. Your sister threw her off, rudely, Mrs. P. says, declined in a most savage manner all offers of assistance, rushed to her own room, and locked herself in. Mrs. Pettigrew Robinson listened at the door to make sure, as she says, that everything was all right. But hearing her moving about and slamming cupboards, she concluded she'd have more chance poking her finger into the pie downstairs, and departed. If Mrs. Marchbanks had told me this, I admit I should have thought the episode worth looking into, but I feel strongly that if I were dying I should still lock the door between myself and Mrs. Pettigrew Robinson. Mrs. P. was quite sure that at no time had Lady Mary anything in her hand. She was dressed as described at the inquest. A long coat over her pyjamas, sleeping suit was Mrs. P.'s expression, stout shoes and a woolly cap, and she kept these garments on throughout the subsequent visit of the doctor. Another odd little circumstance is that Mrs. Pettigrew Robinson, who was awake, you remember, from 2 a.m. onwards, is certain that just before Lady Mary knocked on Mr. Arbuthnot's door, she heard a door slam in the passage somewhere. Well, I don't know what to make of that. Perhaps there's nothing in it, but I just mention it. I've had a rotten time in town. Your brother-in-law-elect was a model of discretion. His room in Albany is a desert from a detecting point of view. No papers except a few English bills and receipts and invitations, and I looked up a few of his inviters, but they were mostly men who'd met him at the club or knew him in the army. They could tell me nothing about his private life. He is known at several nightclubs, and I made the round of them last night, or rather this morning. General verdict, generous, but impervious. By the way, poker seems to have been his great game. No suggestion of anything crooked. He won pretty consistently on the whole, but never very spectacularly. I think the information we want must be in Paris, and I've written to the Sûreté and the Crédit Lyonnais to produce his papers, especially his account and cheque-book. I'm pretty dead with yesterday and today's work. Dancing all night on top of a journey is a jolly poor joke. Unless you want me, I shall be waiting here for the papers. Or I may run over to Paris myself. Cathcart's books here consist of a few modern French novels of the usual kind, and another copy of Manon, with what the catalogues call curious plates. He must have had a life somewhere, mustn't he? The enclosed bill from a beauty specialist in Bond Street may interest you. I called on her. She says he came regularly every week when he was in England. I drew quite a blank at King's Fenton on Sunday, but I've told you that. I don't think the fellow ever went there. I wonder if he slunk off into the moor. It's worth rummaging about, do you think? It's rather like looking for a needle in a bundle of hay. It's odd about that diamond cat. You've got nothing out of the household, I suppose. It doesn't seem to fit number 10 somehow, and yet you'd think somebody would have heard about it in the village if it had been lost. Well, so long. Yours ever, Charles Parker.